One streetlight, one bullet, one secret no one saw coming. Welcome to Marple Mysteries. I am your host, Harrington. Comment your city. I love hearing them. Wolfe walks 35th Street tonight. I didn't know the day was going to be special because the oatmeal was behaving itself. When Fritz's oatmeal is thick enough to hold a spoon upright and doesn't try for a second career as wallpaper paste, that's a sign Providence is in a cooperative mood. Add in the fact that Nero Wolfe had not yet found a reason to complain about the weather, the state of civilization, or my existence, and you could even call it promising. At 9:45 that morning, I was at my desk in the office, finishing the write-up of a job that had ended the previous night, with a woman crying quietly into a $12 handkerchief, and a man figuring out in real time that divorce lawyers are not charitable institutions. Routine, honest billing, no broken furniture. Wolfe was in the plant rooms upstairs, communing with orchids and staying out of my hair, which is how I like my geniuses between 9 and 11. The phone had rung only once, and that was a man from a newspaper who wanted Wolfe's comment on some city scandal. I told him that Wolfe's comment would be phooey at $25 a word, and he hung up. Amateur. The day might have slid along on those comfortable rails if someone hadn't decided to shoot a man on 35th Street just before breakfast. I didn't know that yet either. What I knew at 9:47 was that the office door opened without a ring from the front bell, which meant Fritz had let someone in without asking me first. That is not procedure. Fritz respects procedure like he respects veal stock, properly. The man who stepped in looked like he'd had a long night and had been on time for all of it. Mid-30s, maybe early 40s if life had already been chewing on him, with the kind of jaw that belongs in a recruitment poster and the kind of eyes that don't. He wore a dark suit that had cost good money but had been slept in, and his left hand was in the pocket of his overcoat like it was clutching a lifeline. "Mr. Goodwin?" he asked. "That's what it says on my socks," I told him. "Come in. Shut the door behind you. We like to pretend the city isn't out there until noon." He did as instructed. Up close, I could see the beard stubble, the shadow of a bandage along his jawline, and the way his fingers flexed in the coat pocket every few seconds like they were remembering something warm and unpleasant. "I'm Lieutenant Cal Parker," he said. "Manhattan South Homicide. If you want to get Mr. Wolfe's attention, waving a plate of sweetbreads under his nose will do it. If you want mine, you just said the magic word." "Always nice to see the taxpayer at work," I said. "What can we do for the city today?" "I'd like to see Mr. Wolfe." He said it like he didn't particularly want to, which meant he did. "Sure, I'll hire a crane." I checked the clock. "You're early. The orchids have custody until 11. Sit down. I don't have time for—" "Lieutenant," I cut in. "That line works great at the station house. Here the schedule is sacred scripture. If you want to talk with Nero Wolfe before 11, you'll need a court order signed by the Almighty and countersigned by the governor. And I'm not sure about the governor." "Sit." He looked like he wanted to argue, but the chair won. They usually do, in that room. He sat, perched on the edge like he was ready to spring if anyone tried to read him his rights. "I didn't come here to be cute with you," he said. "That's a relief. I don't do cute with cops before my second cup of coffee. Now, while we're waiting for His Eminence to finish plucking his petals, you can start with why a homicide lieutenant comes here without sending a squad car and a subpoena ahead of him." His jaw tightened. "There was a shooting this morning, West 35th, between 9th and 10th, about 8:15. Nice neighborhood if you like trucks. Guy named Harvey Geller caught a bullet walking from his car to his office. Bookkeeping and tax prep. Small outfit. The shot came from a rooftop across the street. One round, center mass. Whoever fired it knew what he was doing. And Mr. Geller? Still breathing, for now. I filed the name. It didn't ring a bell. And what does Mr. Wolfe have to do with Mr. Geller's respiratory difficulties? Parker shifted in his chair. His hand tightened again in the coat pocket, then came out. He set a small plastic evidence bag on my desk, very carefully, like it might explode. Inside the bag was a bullet. I'm not an expert, but I know enough to recognize a medium-caliber jacketed slug that had finished its career. This one was flattened on one side, scratched and scarred, with just enough shape left to be ugly. "That come out of Geller?" I asked. "No, that one came out of a brick facade across the street, 3 stories up last month." Parker's eyes were on my face, measuring. "Different shooting, same block, 8:30 in the morning, different target." I waited. I know how to give silence room to grow. He cleared his throat. "Ballistics says both slugs came from the same gun." "Congratulations," I said. "You've got yourself a serial shooter and a grudge against mid-morning commuters. I still don't see why you're bringing that little souvenir to Wolfe instead of to your captain." Parker leaned forward. The lines around his eyes got deeper. "Because the first bullet was in a guy named Leonard Ashe. He's dead. And last month, Ashe had an appointment with Nero Wolfe, here in this house, for 10 o'clock that same morning. He never made it. There are times in life when you feel the floor get a shade more solid under your feet. That was one of them." I kept my voice easy. "You talked to Wolfe about that, at the time?" "No." His mouth flattened. "We wrote it up as a robbery gone bad. Ashe's wallet was gone, and he had an expensive watch. Victim had no record, nothing that set off alarms. Single shot, street crime, open case. We didn't connect it to anything. But now you've got Mr. Geller getting similar treatment, and the gun turns out to be recycling its work." "Yeah. And when I started digging, I found a note in Ashe's file about the appointment. His secretary mentioned it. He was coming to consult Wolfe about a confidential matter concerning irregularities in a client's books." Her words, the client being one Harvey Geller. I had heard enough to know this was going to snake its way right into Mr. Wolfe's yellow silk chair, like it or not. A bullet with a path that began and ended on 35th Street, looping through our brownstone on West 35th in the process. It had a sort of symmetry Wolfe would either despise or admire. Upstairs, faintly, I heard movement. That meant the orchids were being tucked in, and the genius was descending. "You tell anyone you're here?" I asked. "No." He hesitated. "I'm not here officially. Not yet." "Ah, the police department will be glad to hear that. You can keep your cracks, Goodwin. I've been doing this 20 years. I can smell when I'm being steered wrong. This thing with Ashe never sat right. Now Geller gets hit with the same gun, and the only common points are this block and your boss's name on a calendar." He jerked his head toward the evidence bag. "If that bullet connects to something Wolfe knows and didn't share." The door to the hall opened and spared us from libel and slander making a guest appearance. Nero Wolfe entered the office like he owned the building, which he does, and the planet, which is still under negotiation. He was wearing a brown suit that respected its tailor, with a tie that had seen more eggs than sunlight. At 280+ pounds, he filled most of the doorway on his way in, and then most of the red leather chair behind his desk when gravity reclaimed him. He glanced at Parker, then at me. "Archie, who is this man, and why is he here?" I got up. "Lieutenant Cal Parker, Manhattan South Homicide. He brought you a present." I held up the evidence bag. Wolfe's eyes, not small, not soft, and never careless, rested on the bag for about half a second, then on Parker. His lips compressed, which for him is the equivalent of most men yelling. "A bullet," he said. "I have no use for it. Remove it from my desk." Parker bristled. "You had a prospective client shot dead on his way here, Mr. Wolfe. Last month. Today another man connected to that client takes one in the chest from the same gun. You're on my street, whether you like bullets or not." Wolfe's gaze went colder. "You did not answer my question. Why are you here, Lieutenant?" To accuse me of murder, accessory after the fact, or discourtesy. If I was accusing you, I wouldn't come alone." Parker's tone was dry. "Ash was walking to an appointment with you. That makes you involved." "That makes me an inconvenience," Wolfe corrected. "A distinction your profession struggles with." "Sit, Lieutenant. Since you have already polluted my room with that object, we may as well hear each other out." Parker sat again, not any more relaxed about it. Wolfe settled his shoulders into the leather, closed his eyes briefly, and then opened them on me. "Summarize," he said. I gave it to him clean. Ash, bullet, appointment, Geller, second bullet, ballistics kumbaya. Wolfe listened without interrupting, which is rare enough that even Parker noticed. When I was done, Wolfe's fingers tapped once on the edge of his desk. "You knew nothing of this previous client's fate, Archie." "Not a whisper. I didn't even know his name." Wolfe sniffed. "You are exonerated, then. That is a relief." "Yeah," I said. "My conscience is dancing the Charleston. What about you?" He turned his head to Parker. "Mr. Ash telephoned my office 5 weeks ago. He spoke with Archie and with me. He said he had discovered financial improprieties, harmful to him and potentially to others, and wished to consult me. He was vague, and I have an antipathy to vagueness. I told him to come here at 10 o'clock the following morning, prepared to be lucid and to pay my fee. He did not appear. I assumed he had thought better of it." Parker's jaw muscles worked. "You didn't think to call the police when a man who talked about improprieties didn't show up. You didn't wonder if something had happened." "I wonder about many things, Lieutenant," Wolfe said coolly. "Very few of them merit the attention of your department. Men often resolve to expose wrongdoing and then reconsider. It is tedious, but not criminal. Had I telephoned you to report each instance, your switchboard would be unusable." "And now?" "And now," Wolfe conceded, "the coincidence of 2 shootings and the connection you suggest between them and this house invite consideration. But invitation does not compel acceptance." Parker leaned forward. "Let me make it more compelling. When Ash was killed, his briefcase was missing. We never recovered it. This morning, when Geller was shot, his briefcase was untouched. Cash, phone, everything on him still there. So if this is a robbery pattern, it's the strangest I've seen. If it's not, it is not," Wolfe said. "Then someone is taking shots at men who know things about the same set of books, and both of them had dealings with you, Mr. Wolfe. That means you may be in the line of fire, too. You, this house, everyone in it." That last part slid across the desk and settled in the room like a guest we hadn't invited. I looked at Wolfe. His jaw had set. For him, the brownstone is more than an address. It's a sovereign nation. Threaten its neutrality, and you get war. "Pff," he began, then stopped himself. "Bah. I'm not an object of gunfire, and I have no intention of becoming one." "You exaggerate." "Do I?" Parker's gaze shifted to me and back. "Ash calls you because he's scared. He ends up dead. Geller knows the same dirty laundry, and he's lying in a hospital with a hole in his chest. If whoever's behind this thinks you took delivery of something from either of them, papers, names, whatever, do you really believe he's going to shrug and walk away?" Wolfe's fingers curled, then relaxed. He looked at the bullet in its plastic shroud like it was a rude insect on his napkin. "You said," he inquired, "that your visit is not official." "That's right," Parker replied. "If I walk into the captain's office and tell him I'm consulting Nero Wolfe on a case we wrote off as a street mugging, he'll hand me a psych evaluation and a desk. I came here on my own time." "Why?" Parker hesitated. "Because I don't like whoever's doing this. 2 clean men, far as we can tell. They don't deserve what they got. And if this street turns into a shooting gallery, that's on me. This is my patch." I watched Wolfe's face. The combination on his safe is less guarded than his expression when civic virtues are mentioned, but there was a flicker. Duty, honor, all those heavy words. He treats them like onions, Useful in cooking, but prone to make a man sentimental. You want what from me? Wolfe asked. Information, Parker said. Anything Ash might have told you on the phone. Anyone Geller might have mentioned when he called him. He did not call me. Wolfe's tone had steel in it. Mr. Geller is unknown to me. I've never spoken to him. Parker frowned, but Ash's secretary said, She said he was going to consult me regarding irregularities in a client's books, Wolfe cut in. That is not the same as saying the client telephoned. Do not infect my office with imprecision, sir. If Mr. Geller wished to make use of my services, he did so through Mr. Ash. Fine, Parker exhaled. Then help me another way. You take this on. Dig into it from your side. I keep working it from mine. You find something, you let me know. That was the unusual proposal. You could see it sitting between them, a homicide lieutenant, hat in hand, asking Nero Wolfe for a partnership. It should have been enough to make the walls tremble. Wolfe merely closed his eyes. For an instant, his face looked heavier, older. The room went quiet except for the faint hum of traffic through the closed windows and the beating of Parker's frustration against his ribs. Nero, I said, because someone had to. He's got bullets taking the scenic route on our block. If some joker starts using West 35th as a firing range, the noise alone is going to ruin your afternoon naps. Be quiet, Archie, he murmured. That's gratitude. I shut up. 30 seconds went by. I counted them. At 42, Wolfe opened his eyes again. They were not pleased, but they were decided. Very well, he said. I will undertake an inquiry. Mr. Ash's death, Mr. Geller's shooting, and whatever unlovely enterprise binds them. My fee is $30,000, payable by whomever retains me or by the beneficiary, and my conditions regarding interference and publicity are absolute. Parker stared. I told you, I'm not here as the department. I don't have authority to hire you. Then you are here as a supplicant, Wolfe said. I've agreed to consider the matter. As for remuneration, you may leave that for now. There are other currencies. That was when I knew he had already decided there was more to this than public safety and stray bullets. Wolfe does not work for the joy of service. He works for money, food, and the occasional intellectual trophy. If he was teeing the fee up like that, it meant he smelled a payoff of a different sort. Archie, he said, you will accompany Lieutenant Parker to Mr. Geller's office and to any other relevant scene. You will observe and report. You will also obtain everything you can about Mr. Ash's affairs in the days preceding his death. Names, relationships, grievances. I want the circle closed. Right away, sir, I said. Just let me grab my bulletproof vest and rosary. You will also, he added, have Fritz install a new chain on the front door. A stronger one. Parker's mouth twitched. You're expecting callers, Mr. Wolfe. I'm expecting, Wolfe said dryly, that if bullets have chosen this street as their promenade, it is prudent to ensure that, should they wish to visit, they are not admitted without scrutiny. He looked at Parker again. Leave the bullet. Parker's brows went up. I thought you had no use for it. I have no use for the bullet as such, Wolfe said. As a token of intrusion, it is invaluable. It will remind me that whoever fired it has violated my sphere and that I have consented to notice. I dislike being reminded, Lieutenant. It sharpens my appetite. Parker stood. He left the evidence bag on the desk. You'll call me when you have something? I will communicate when there is something to communicate, Wolfe said. In the meantime, do not bring uniformed men to my door without necessity. It upsets Fritz. Parker gave me a look halfway between a shrug and an apology, then headed out. When the front door closed behind him, I turned back to Wolfe. So, I said, we're in. Bullets on our block, cops in our office, mysterious accountants, and no fee in writing. You want to tell me why you're really interested? Don't say civic duty. I'll choke. He looked at the bullet on the desk, then at me. Archie, he said. "A man telephones me to confess that he has stumbled upon corruption and danger. Before he can reach me, he is shot. Another man, linked to him and to the same corruption, is shot in a manner suggesting design. The assassin displays a distasteful efficiency, yet leaves behind an implication." His lips curled. "That implication touches this house. I cannot ignore it." "You could," I suggested. "You ignore lots of things. Telemarketers, the Internal Revenue Service. This is different." He moved one finger, just enough to tap the plastic. "Someone has fired upon my street twice, and, in effect, upon my time. That is an offense against order, and against me. I will not endure it." "Ah," I said. "So it's personal." "It will be," he said, "by the time I'm finished with him." He closed his eyes again, signaling that the audience was over. I picked up my notebook, my hat, and my own personal fondness for not catching bullets, and headed for the hole. It's one thing when trouble comes looking for you. It's another when it sends in a calling card and leaves it on Wolfe's desk. That bullet on 35th Street had just bought itself a tour of the brownstone, and if I knew Nero Wolfe, it was going to pay interest. I caught up to Parker halfway down the stoop, where he was giving the street his professional scowl. West 35th was going about its business. Trucks, horns, steam, and the usual background chorus of people trying to get somewhere they'd complain about when they arrived. No chalk marks on the sidewalk, no yellow tape. The city had already digested its morning bullet and moved on. Parker flicked a glance at me. "You always talk to him like that?" "Like what?" "Like you're not impressed." "Oh, I'm impressed," I told him. "I just don't show it. It would go to his head and he'd raise my workload." We headed toward 9th. His unmarked was at the curb, a gray sedan that had "cop car" stenciled all over it in invisible ink. I got in on the passenger side and watched him check his mirrors twice before pulling into traffic. That's either habit or nerves. Maybe both. "You know anything about Geller?" I asked. "Not much yet. Owns a small accounting firm. 3 employees. Nice clean operation. Been on that block 8 years. No priors, no known enemies. Married, 1 kid in college. Living the dream." "Yeah?" "One of my guys asked the wife if he had enemies. She said, 'He's an accountant, not a gangster.'" Parker's mouth twitched. I didn't have the heart to tell her that sometimes it's the same thing. We swung right on 9th and crawled up the avenue behind a truck that apparently identified as a Glacier. I let the silence sit until it started to develop a personality. "What's your angle on Ash?" I asked. "You said his death never sat right." Parker rubbed his jaw. "He was a numbers guy too, but corporate. Mid-level at a freight company over on 10th. No gambling debts, no drugs, no side action we could see. Wallet. Gone, watch gone. One witness heard the shot and saw a guy run. Hoodie, jeans, generic sneaker brand. We did the usual canvas. The description might as well have been human." And now, he said, "I don't buy that a street punk shot one accountant, stole his stuff, then a month later carefully puts a bullet in another accountant on the same street and forgets to take the goods." "Your street punk took a night class in consistency," I said. "Could be he dropped out." Parker snorted. It was progress. We turned onto 35th, where the traffic thinned out. 4 doors down from where we'd left the brownstone, the block opened up into the usual mix of brick, glass, and architectural regret. The building that housed Geller's outfit was red brick with a ground-floor deli and 3 stories above, narrow with a faded awning that had once been ambitious about its shade of green. No cops out front, no curiosity seekers. If you didn't know somebody had almost died there a couple of hours ago, you'd never guess. Inside, the stairwell smelled like salami, floor wax, and the ghosts of cigarettes. On the second landing, Parker nodded to a uniform who was pretending he hadn't been bored for hours. The door to Geller and Associates stood open, a plain frosted glass job with black letters, Harvey Geller, CPA. Someone had put a strip of crime scene tape across it as a symbolic gesture before giving up and sticking it to the frame. "Place is technically sealed," Parker said. "But since I'm technically here, you're technically with me." "That's a lot of technically for one accountant," I told him. We went in. The outer office was neat enough to make me want to pick up something just to see what would happen. 2 desks, 2 computers, 2 chairs that had never been relaxed in, a waist-high file cabinet in the corner, and a fake rubber plant that wasn't fooling anyone. The 3rd desk was in the back office behind a half-open door. Geller's, presumably. A woman sat at one of the front desks, dark hair pinned back, early 30s if she'd been honest with her last birthday cake, in a navy blouse and skirt. Her face had the stunned, tight look of someone who'd run out of places to put her shock and had resorted to shelving it behind her eyes. "Miss Morley," Parker said. She stood automatically, like the name had pulled a lever. "Lieutenant, they said you might be back." Her gaze flicked to me. This is Archie Goodwin," Parker supplied. "He works for Nero Wolfe." That got a reaction. Her shoulders came up a fraction. "Mr. Wolfe, Harvey talked about him." "Yeah?" I said. "All good, I hope." She gave me a brittle, almost smile. "He said Mr. Wolfe was supposed to be Ash's ace in the hole." That was the phrase. He thought... Her throat worked. He thought if anyone could untangle what was happening, it would be him. "Sit, Miss Morley," Parker told her gently. "We're not going to be long." She sat. Her hands went to straightening a stack of forms that didn't need it. "Tell Mr. Goodwin what you told me about this morning," Parker said. She glanced from him to me, then fixed her eyes on the paperwork like it could cue her lines. "Harvey comes in most mornings around 8:20. I get in at 8:30. Today I got here right on time. The door was locked like usual. I took out my keys, and that's when I heard the sirens. Lots of them. I looked out the window in the hallway." Her voice thinned. They were working on him in the street. I saw his overcoat. His briefcase was on the ground. "Anyone else here yet?" I asked. "Just me. Simon, Mr. Dade, comes in at 9. Rachel gets here at 9:30. She swallowed. I called his wife. The police were already there. "Did Mr. Geller say anything yesterday about being worried?" I asked. "Calls, threats, mysterious strangers with bad cologne?" She shook her head. "He was tired. The last few weeks he's been working late. Lots of private meetings. He didn't tell me the details, just the scheduling. But he did say once that if this didn't blow up in his face, he was going to take a vacation somewhere warm and gain 10 pounds. Her mouth twitched in a sad imitation of a smile. I told him he could have mine. "Were those meetings with Ash?" I asked. "Some of them," she said. "Some with other clients. He told me Ash had found something dirty, but he didn't want to get specific. He said it wasn't safe to talk about on the phone. Then Ash..." She stopped, clutching the papers until they curled. Parker shifted. "Miss Morley, you told me Ash came here once." "Yes. 2 days before he died. He and Harvey met in the back for almost an hour. When Mr. Ash left, he looked..." She searched for the word and settled on changed. Like someone had given him bad news about his future. "Any arguments? Raised voices?" "No. Just low, serious talk." I nodded toward the inner office. "Mind if I take a look?" She glanced at Parker, who gave a small nod. "Don't touch the computer," he said. "Forensics will love me even less." I'll restrain myself. I went past her desk, into the back. Geller's office was larger, but followed the same decorating philosophy. Desk, chair, computer, 2 visitor chairs that might as well have been labeled clients who owe. A window faced the street. Another, smaller window on the side wall faced the building across the alley. On the desk sat a heavy green blotter, a brass pen set, an old-fashioned adding machine that someone loved enough not to replace, and a neat stack of folders, squared and aligned. He hadn't expected to be shot this morning. People who are planning to die don't leave their paperclips in marching order. I stepped to the front window. Down on the sidewalk, the street bustled like nothing had happened. I traced the angle in my head. Geller walking from his car toward the entrance, shooter on a rooftop across the way. It was a clean line if you didn't care who saw you hauling a rifle up a stairwell. "Hey, Parker," I called. "You ever figure out how the shooter got a sight line without anyone noticing?" He joined me at the window. Building across the street has roof access through a door that doesn't always latch. That's my guess. No cameras up there. We're checking prints, but if this guy's as careful as I think, he left about as much DNA as a cloud. So maybe he likes routine, I said. Same street, same time, same approach. Ash heading here, Geller heading here. Bullet says good morning. Parker grunted. If I can find something he missed, I'll buy you dinner. I was going to put it on Wolfe's tab, I said, but I appreciate the sentiment. There wasn't much more to see in Geller's tidy kingdom. No overturned drawers, no sign of a frantic search. Whatever this was, it smelled less like burglary and more like housekeeping on a different level. Back in the outer office, Ms. Morley was steadying herself with a keyboard. I asked her for Ash's full name, contact info, and any files she knew they'd worked on together. She gave me what she had. Most of it would have to be pried out of the computer with a warrant, which was Parker's department, not mine. When we stepped back into the hallway and the door clicked shut behind us, Parker blew out a breath. "Well?" he asked. "Well," I said, "you've got 2 dead or nearly dead men who spent the last weeks of their lives swimming in somebody's dirty numbers, not telling their secretaries the punchline. They both end up ventilated on our street, and whoever did it is either very confident or very stupid. Nero Wolfe has decided to be offended. That's the part that should keep you up nights." "Why?" he asked. "Because," I said, "if he's offended, he's not going to stop at finding your shooter. He's going to want to know who aimed him." Parker didn't argue with that. We went down the stairs and out to the street, where his grey sedan still clung grimly to the curb. "What's next?" I asked. "Ash," he said, unlocking the car. "You want to see where he spent his time before someone punched his ticket?" "Sure, I've always had a weakness for freight." We got in. He pulled out into traffic with more confidence than the sedan deserved and headed toward 10th. On the way, I flipped my notebook open. "Fill me in on the company," I said. "What are they called, and do they know they're part of your personal crime wave?" "Lamson and Gale Logistics," he said. "Mid-sized freight and warehousing. Owners named Victor Lamson. Old money, or he wants you to think so. Gale died a while back. They've got a big warehouse and office front on 10th, 2 blocks from where Ash caught it. Any priors there?" "Nothing serious. Couple of OSHA fines. Some grumbling about union negotiations. You can't move boxes in this town without annoying somebody." "You talked to Lamson after Ash died?" "Yeah." He was shocked. Parker's tone made the quote marks audible. "Said Ash was a good man, no enemies, the usual script. HR gave us a folder of performance reviews and an Employee of the Month photo. The widow said the same. No affairs, no gambling, no sudden trips to Rio." "Maybe he developed a conscience late in life," I said. "It happens." "Don't get poetic on me, Goodwin." We turned onto 10th. Lamson and Gale Logistics took up most of the block, a wide loading dock with bays big enough to swallow trucks whole, and a glass-fronted office section that tried to look modern and mostly succeeded in reflecting traffic. Forklifts buzzed in and out like large, underpaid bees. Parker parked in a spot that had a sign warning visitors will be towed, which I assumed didn't apply to homicide lieutenants. Inside, the lobby was a rectangle of industrial carpet and fake wood, with a reception desk that could have doubled as a barricade. Behind it sat a man whose shirt was 1 size too small for his neck and 1 size too large for his shoulders. "Lieutenant," the man said, with the resigned politeness of someone who had already had more than his weekly quota of cops. "Mr. Lamson is in his office." "Good," Parker said. "We'll save on phone calls. This is Mr. Goodwin." The receptionist blinked. "From the detective, the one in the brownstone." "That's right," I told him. "Don't worry, I left the orchids at home." He didn't know what to do with that, so he buzzed us in. Lamson's office was on the second floor, with a window that looked out over the loading area like a general surveying troops. He was standing when we came in, tall and thin with a silver mane that owed something to genetics and something to chemistry. His suit had the kind of cut that says, "I know my tailor's first name and his children's birthdays." "Lieutenant Parker," he said, "this is an unexpected déjà vu. Sorry to drop in again, Mr. Lamson." Parker gestured me forward. "This is Archie Goodwin." Lamson's eyes flickered. "Ah, Nero Wolfe's man." It was starting to be a refrain. If this kept up, I'd need business cards. "I hope that's not a problem," I said. "That depends," Lamson replied. His voice had a smoothness that could have been charm or practice. "Are you here about Leonard again?" "Yes," Parker said. "And no. There was another shooting this morning. A man named Harvey Geller, accountant." Dear God. Lamson sank back into his chair as if the news had flattened his spine. "What does that have to do with Leonard?" "That's what we're trying to find out," I said. "Mr. Ash had an appointment scheduled with my employer the morning he was killed. He also, we're told, had concerns about irregularities in a client's books. That client was Geller. Now both of them have been shot on the same street with the same gun. At minimum, it's bad luck. At maximum, it's a pattern." Color drained from his face, leaving it a paler version of itself. "Leonard never said anything to me about that, about irregularities." "Maybe he meant to," I suggested, but he called Wolfe instead. Lamson frowned, an elegant, offended pucker. "I trust my people to come to me if there is a problem within my company, Mr. Goodwin. We are not some fly-by-night outfit cooking the books in a back room." "Sure," I said. "But suppose Leonard stumbled over something that didn't involve the company as a whole. Maybe just one client, or one shipment, or one, what do you call them, stream of revenue. If he thought talking to you might not be enough, or might put you in a bad spot. You're suggesting he thought I was involved?" Lamson's voice cracked like a branch. "That's absurd." "Relax," Parker said, in a tone that implied the opposite. "We're suggesting he was scared enough to reach outside his usual circle. We need to know what he was working on, who he was meeting, and why anyone would want him dead." Lamson's hands flattened on the desk. "I've already given you access to his work records once, Lieutenant. You combed through them." "We combed through what HR thought we needed," Parker said. "This time I want everything. Files, emails, client lists, internal audits. And I want to know if anyone has shown unusual interest in his caseload since he died." "That will take time," Lamson protested. "Sure," I said. "But you've had a month to start missing him. Maybe something's occurred to you." He hesitated. It was small, but it was there. My radar pinged. "Well," he said slowly, "there was one thing. I didn't think it relevant to the, robbery." "Try me," Parker said. 2 weeks before Leonard died, he requested a meeting with me. Lamson's fingers traced a line on the blotter. He said there was a discrepancy in the manifests for one of our high-volume clients. A series of shipments that didn't reconcile with the billing. He thought it might be an internal error. Or possibly, his mouth twisted, possibly theft. "From inside or outside?" I asked. He didn't specify. Lamson looked offended by the very concept. I told him to look into it quietly and report back. He was thorough, and I trusted him. He didn't come back before it happened. "Name of the client?" Parker asked. Lamson cleared his throat. "You'd prefer," Parker cut in, "for bullets not to be flying around your accounts department. Name. Lamson's jaw flexed. The client is called Charterman Imports. They move electronics through our warehouse. Televisions, small appliances, the like. Long-standing relationship. They pay on time. Where are they based? I asked. They maintain a small office in the city, but most of their business is overseas. Asia. And since Ash died, Parker said. Any contact from them about missing merchandise, billing disputes, anything like that? No, Lamson said. Nothing out of the ordinary. They're punctual, efficient, and unremarkable. That's why we like them. Who else knew about this discrepancy? I asked. Anyone besides you and Ash? Lamson hesitated again for half a heartbeat. I don't believe so. It was a good answer. Smooth, quick, and just a hair too polished. Anyone who might have guessed? I said. Co-workers, subordinates, rivals for the Employee of the Month plaque. He almost smiled at that. This is a logistics company, Mr. Goodwin, not a soap opera. Leonard worked closest with our operations manager, Ms. Brandt. She would have noticed if his workload changed, but I did not discuss the matter with her. Then I'd like to, I said, if you don't mind. His eyes narrowed. You're not police? No, I said. I'm worse. I help Nero Wolfe ask questions. Parker didn't bother to hide his impatience. Mr. Lamson, I can get a warrant and make this a production, or I can have Mr. Goodwin chat with your staff with your blessing. Which sounds better to you? Lamson breathed out slowly, like he'd just been told the dessert menu was limited. Very well. I'll have Ms. Brandt and anyone else you require made available. But I hope you understand, Lieutenant, this is a business. If word gets around that we're under police scrutiny. 2 of your numbers men have been shot in the street, Parker said. You're already under scrutiny. We're your best chance of not being the 3rd. Lamson didn't like the sound of that, but he didn't argue. He picked up the phone, punched an extension, and asked someone to send Ms. Brandt up. While we waited, I took a turn at the window. Below, forklift ballet continued, crates moving in practiced patterns. Somewhere in that choreography, Leonard Ash had seen numbers that didn't dance the way they were supposed to. He'd gone to Lamson, then to Wolfe. Now he was in the ground, and his briefcase was on a milk carton. Behind me, the door opened. A woman came in, late 30s, compact, with close-cropped blonde hair and a face that had been outdoors more than once. She wore a blazer that hadn't been chosen for fashion and a pair of eyes that had seen every trick of the warehouse floor and was taking notes for Volume 2. Mr. Lamson, she said. You wanted me? Yes, Ms. Brandt. Lamson gestured. This is Lieutenant Parker and Mr. Goodwin. They have more questions about Leonard. Ms. Brandt gave us both a quick scan, filed us in whatever mental drawer she kept for interruptions, and took the chair Lamson waved her to. She sat straight, hands on her knees, as if ready to be interrogated about forklift safety. Ms. Brandt, Parker said, we're revisiting Leonard Ash's death. New developments. We'd like to know more about his work here. Her jaw tightened. Leonard was one of the good ones. You should have done that a month ago. Parker took it without flinching. We're doing it now. I leaned in a little. You were close to him? As close as you get in a place like this, she said. We worked the same side of the house. I managed operations. He made sure the numbers matched what we were moving. We had lunch once in a while. Talked about stupid TV shows. That close enough for you? It'll do for a start, I said. Did he seem worried about anything before he died? She hesitated, then glanced at Lamson, who was watching her like she was a witness for the defense. Tell them what you know, Ms. Brandt, he said. She took a breath. He was preoccupied. Last couple of weeks he stayed late 3 nights out of 5. He said he was chasing discrepancies. He didn't say which client, but I could tell it was one of the big accounts. You don't burn overtime on a mom and pop. Did he ask you for help? I asked. Not directly. But he did ask me twice to pull location logs for certain containers. Wanted to confirm when they'd come in and gone out. compared to the manifest entries. I told him if something was wrong, we should loop in Mr. Lamson. He said he already had. Did he mention Charterman Imports? I asked. That earned me a long look. You've done your homework. I'm trying, I said. How about it? Yes, she said reluctantly. He asked for Charterman's movement logs for the last 2 months. I gave them to him. It was legit. He has clearance for that. I assumed it was for a routine audit. Did you notice anything unusual yourself? Parker asked. Missing pallets, phantom shipments, drivers complaining they're hauling air instead of TVs? She shook her head. On my end, everything looked clean. That's the thing that's been bugging me. If there was something off, it wasn't in the warehouse movement. Our counts matched what was physically there. If Leonard found a discrepancy, it had to be on the paper side. Billing, invoices. Lamson made a small sound. Which would be internal, not with the client. Or both, I said. If someone's skimming, you can do it with a friend on the outside, or you can do it alone in a dark office. You get different flavors of trouble. Brandt's eyes flicked to me, interested despite herself. You think this is about skimming? I think Mr. Ash thought it was about something, I said. And now he's dead. That promotes his theory to worthy of inspection. Did he ever mention going to anyone outside the company? She frowned. You mean like the police? Like a certain large man who doesn't own any work boots, I said. Nero Wolfe. Her eyebrows went up. He joked once that if this place ever really went sideways, he'd take it to Wolfe instead of internal. Said it would be cleaner. I thought he was just venting. People around here mutter about going to the press, to the feds, to Oprah. It's cathartic. Did he say that before or after he spoke to Mr. Lamson about the Charterman problem? I asked. After, she said. I remember because he came out of Lamson's office looking like he'd swallowed a stapler. I asked if he was okay. He said, if I get myself killed, you can tell them I wasn't completely stupid. I told him that was a lousy joke. He agreed. Then he laughed and said maybe he'd call that fat detective who never leaves his chair. His words, not mine. Lamson looked pained, but he didn't deny it. Parker made a note. Anybody else around who might have heard him say something like that? Not that I noticed, she said. But this place has ears. Gossip moves faster than forklifts. Speaking of ears, I said, anyone irritated with Leonard lately? Someone he blocked from a promotion, caught in a mistake, humiliated in the break room? She thought about it. No one obvious. He wasn't the type to grandstand. If he caught an error, he fixed it and moved on. I'd have heard if he'd made enemies. People talk to me. Because your operations, I asked. Because I listen. Her gaze leveled on Lamson for a second, then returned to us. You want my 2 cents? Leonard stepped on something big without meaning to. Something that reaches beyond this building. Otherwise, he'd still be here complaining about the coffee. You didn't mention any of this when he died, Parker said. I told your detective he'd been working late and seemed stressed, she shot back. He wrote it down and nodded like a bobblehead. Nobody asked me detailed questions about clients or manifests. You were calling it a mugging before the ink was dry. Parker took that one too. We may have been wrong, he said. We're correcting that. She studied him, then me. You really think there's a connection between what Leonard stumbled on and this other guy, Geller? I think it's more than a coincidence that 2 men poking around the same numbers ended up as target practice, I said, and that both of them intersect with my employer's calendar. That's enough to get me to leave a warm, safe office and come talk to people who move televisions. Lucky us, she said dryly. We wrapped it up with details. Ash's schedule, who he ate lunch with, whether he'd had any sudden influx of cash. He hadn't. Lamson promised, with an air of martyrdom, to have IT pull Ash's emails and internal messages for Parker to review. That would take time. Everything in this case was going to take time unless our shooter got impatient and added another entry to his to-do list. Back on the street, the afternoon had edged forward a notch. I checked my watch. It was just past 1. Lunch at the Brownstone is at 1, and Fritz treats punctuality as a seasoning. I had a choice: stay with Parker in his paperwork or go home, feed Wolfe information and myself stew. It wasn't a hard call. Parker knew it. "You heading back?" he asked, leaning on the sedan. "I can drop you." "Yeah," I said. "He'll want a full report. He gets cranky if he has to guess." "Good," Parker said. "I want him cranky. Maybe he'll think faster." "If he thinks any faster, the building will overheat," I told him. "Call me if Geller takes a turn or if your ballistics boys discover the bullet is actually a love letter." He grunted what might have been a goodbye. I left him with his car and his conscience and walked back the 2 blocks to the Brownstone. The street looked the same as it had that morning, but I noticed angles now: the rooftops, the narrow alleys, the places where a man with a scope could turn a sidewalk into a shooting gallery. The new chain on the front door glinted when I let myself in. Fritz must have installed it the minute Wolfe mentioned it. When geniuses and bullets are in play, Fritz's priority list reshuffles. "Mr. Goodwin," he called from the kitchen. "You're late." "Blame homicide," I said, hanging my hat. "Is he at table?" "Of course." Fritz's tone made it clear that whatever the NYPD thought of itself, true authority was in the dining room. I went in. Wolfe was in his usual place at the end of the table, napkin tucked, eyes on the plate in front of him, which held lamb stew and potatoes that smelled good enough to make a man swear off crime entirely. He glanced up as I sat, then flicked his eyes to the clock. 11 minutes, he said. "You have abused a lamb." "It died as it lived," I said, picking up my spoon, "in the service of humanity. You want a report now, or after you've forgiven me?" "Now," he said. "I prefer to know what I am digesting." I've done reports under worse conditions than Fritz's lamb stew, but not many. Wolfe made a ceremony of dipping his spoon, tasting, and closing his eyes in something like prayer. Once he'd confirmed the universe still rotated and Fritz still knew what to do with the kitchen, he opened them again and pointed the spoon handle at me. "Begin," he said. So I did. I walked him through Cal Parker's arrival and the bullet, Geller's office and Ms. Morley, and then Lamson and Gale, with a little flourish for Lamson's hair and Ms. Brandt's attitude. I'm not shy about editing when the audience is impatient, but with Wolfe you learn quick that you can't leave out the parts you think are boring. Those are the ones he decides to sharpen his teeth on. He listened, chewing deliberately, only interrupting. Twice. Once to ask me to repeat Charterman's name, and once to inquire about the precise wording of Ash's remark to Brandt about not being completely stupid. When I was finished, I attacked what was left of my stew before it went from hot to history. Wolfe dabbed his lips, leaned back, and shut his eyes, which didn't mean he was done, only that we had reached Act 2. "Phew," he muttered eventually. "A freight company, an import firm, and an accountant's shop. Dull, drab, and tedious." "You're the one who let the bullet in the house," I reminded him. "I let a police lieutenant into the house," he corrected. The bullet was his unfortunate escort. He opened his eyes and reached for his beer. "Recount Ms. Brandt's comments regarding the manifests." "Precisely." I did, down to the part about warehouse counts, matching physical stock, and the discrepancy living on the paper side. He nodded once. "That comforts me." "Comfort is good," I said. "As long as it doesn't get between you and the truth. What's comforting about 2 sets of numbers and 1 set of TVs? "It indicates," he said, "that we are not dealing with pilferage by stevedores or drivers. Such miscreants remove goods from the stream, leaving gaps. Miss Brandt's warehouse sees no gaps. Therefore, if there is theft, it is affected by duplication, substitution, or fraud in documentation. That narrows the field." "Sure," I said. From 8 million New Yorkers to 4 million. He ignored me. And Mr. Ashe, per your account, saw enough to suspect theft. He spoke to Lamson, who told him to investigate further. He then, dissatisfied or alarmed, telephoned me. Before he could consult me in person, he was murdered. Mr. Geller, who shares a history with the same numbers, is shot a month later. The shootings occur on our street. The same weapon is used. The coincidence is intolerable. He glared at his glass, as if it had suggested the coincidence. No dessert today, he told Fritz when he appeared to clear. Bring coffee in the office. If you want to know how serious Wolfe is about a case, check his dessert. When it becomes a casualty, the situation is grave. We migrated to the office. Wolfe eased into his custom-built throne. I took my desk, and the bullet lay on his as if it had been born there. He regarded it with the same distaste he might give a fly in the butter. Archie, he said, once Fritz had delivered the coffee and vacated, we must define our problem. I thought the problem was that someone's shooting people near our front stoop, I said. But if there's something worse, I'll sit down. Don't be fatuous. He sat forward a fraction of an inch. We must learn why Mr. Ashe felt the need to consult me rather than trust his employer or the authorities, and why Mr. Geller's connection to him merited the same homicidal attention. Until we know that, we are stumbling in fog. Right now, I said, our fog includes Lamson, who might be shocked or might be acting. Ms. Brandt, who listens to gossip. Charterman Imports, who move televisions with suspicious punctuality. Ms. Morley, who knows Geller's schedule and probably his caffeine intake, and Geller's wife, who hasn't even had the pleasure of meeting me yet. Add Lieutenant Parker, Wolfe said. His motives require scrutiny. Why did he come here unofficially? Why now? Did he hope to enlist me or to disarm me? Disarm you of what? I asked. We don't have anything except a story and a bullet he already knows about. We have my curiosity, Wolfe said. Some men find that dangerous. I let that hang while I watched him sip coffee. When he starts pondering motives on our side of the fence, it isn't paranoia. It's housekeeping. All right, I said. So where do you want your Archie applied next? You will first telephone Mr. Geller's house, he said. Ascertain his condition at the hospital and whether visitors are permitted. If he is capable of speech, you will see him. He may not live long enough to be cautious. A dying man sometimes indulges in candor. And if he's not talking, then you will talk to his wife. Wolfe tipped a finger at me. Whether he is, in your charming idiom, crooked is immaterial. He may have been attacked not for his misdeeds but for attempting to rectify or reveal someone else's. His wife will know if his conscience had begun to trouble him, or if his hours kept her awake. She might also know who he was scared of, I agreed, assuming he was that kind of considerate husband. Second, Wolfe continued, you will persist with Lamson and Gale. Miss Brandt is likely to be our most reliable voice there, but her inferences will be contaminated by loyalty and resentment. I want the raw data. Mr. Lamson has promised to provide Mr. Ashe's files. When Lieutenant Parker notifies you they are available, you will examine them here. You will not trust the lieutenant's summary. You will read them yourself. That's going to be a barrel of laughs, I said. Don't you want Saul to do that? He likes burrowing. Saul Panzer, Wolfe said, will be engaged shortly, but not to read ledgers. I have not yet decided how he is to be used. Until I do, you will suffice. Your mind is not hopelessly refractory. I'll embroider that on a pillow, I said. He shut his eyes briefly, either in pain or to avoid seeing me smile. Third, Charterman Imports. I want an impression of them, their offices, their personnel, their pretensions. You will discover how long they have been Lamson's clients, who their local arm is, and whether any of their officers were acquainted with Mr. Ashe or Mr. Geller socially. If there is a human connection, I want it on paper. Right, I said, making notes. Hospital, wife, freight vampires, television importers. Anything else while I'm young? Yes. His eyes opened, and for a moment they had the distant look he gets when he's staring at a pattern only he can see. Our street. You will speak with the superintendent of the building opposite Mr. Geller's office. You will learn who has legitimate access to the roof, who has keys to the stairwell, and whether any tenants have a habit of appearing and disappearing at odd hours. 2 shootings, identical vantage, demand attention. You think the shooter lives there? It is possible, he said, or he is made welcome there. At minimum, he is emboldened. Men do not repeat a perilous maneuver unless they trust their path. He leaned back, fingers steepled. Go. Just like that, I asked. No inspirational speech. No warning about bullets finding their way into thick-headed assistants. If you find a bullet, he said dryly, do not bring it home. I stood. I'll do my best to avoid collecting any souvenirs. At the door, I turned back. What about Parker? You want me to keep him looped in, or let him follow at a jog? Keep him informed insofar as it benefits us, Wolfe said. Do not make him an enemy unless he insists. We may need his authority. We do not need his supervision. Fair enough, I said. If anything blows up, I'll call from a safe distance. Archie. Yeah? Be circumspect, he said. Whoever fired that, he jerked his chin at the plastic bag on the desk, is competent. I dislike losing competent men, even to other people's bullets. That was as close as Nero Wolfe gets to be careful. I nodded and left before he decided to spoil it. I started with the phone. The directory gave me Geller's home number, and a woman's voice picked up on the 4th ring, tight and frayed. Hello? Mrs. Geller. I pitched it low and neutral. My name is Archie Goodwin. I work for Nero Wolfe. There was a tiny pause, like I'd reached through the line and tapped her shoulder. Mr. Wolfe? The detective? That's him. I'm his ambulatory unit. I'm calling because your husband had some contact with a man named Leonard Ash, and Mr. Wolfe may be able to help with what happened this morning. The breath hitched on the other end. Is Harvey? They said he was in surgery. They wouldn't tell me more. I'm sorry I don't have fresher news than that, I said. But if I can see him, I will. Which hospital? St. Mark's, on 11th. She swallowed. They took him there in the ambulance. I'm going back in a few minutes. I'll meet you there, I said. If you don't object. We need to understand why anyone would do this to him. Another fragment of silence, then, I'll be in the 3rd floor waiting room, by the elevators. She hung up. You can't blame a woman in her position for not worrying about phone etiquette. St. Mark's was a 15-minute walk if you enjoy sirens and exhaust. I took a cab, partly because Wolfe had told me to be circumspect, and partly because my shoes had already done their civic duty for the day. The hospital lobby was a low-ceilinged grind of linoleum, fluorescent light, and people who'd lost track of whether they were sitting or standing. 3rd floor, by the elevators. I found her. Ruth Geller was late 30s, maybe 40, with short dark hair that had been styled this morning and ruined by lunchtime, and a face that would have been pretty if it hadn't been clenched around fear. She was perched on a plastic chair, hands wrapped so tightly around a paper cup of coffee that it was in danger of filing a complaint. I introduced myself again. She nodded and made room on the next chair. The coffee trembled in her hands. They said, she began, then stopped, took a breath, and started again. They said they got the bullet out. He lost a lot of blood. He's in recovery. They don't know about complications. Did they let you see him? I asked. Just for a minute. Her eyes filled, then steadied. He was pale. Tubes. I talked. I don't know if he heard me. Did he say anything? I watched her closely. Anything at all? She shook her head. He tried, I think. But they had him under. He hates feeling helpless. Her mouth twisted. He's not going to like this. We let that sit for a moment. A nurse pushed a cart past us, wheels squeaking like they were protesting labor conditions. "Mrs. Geller," I said, "I know this is not the day you ordered, but I need to ask you a few things now, while your memory is sharp and before anyone else starts massaging the story. All right?" "Yes," she said. "If it helps. If it gets whoever did this." "That's the idea," I told her. "How long have you known about Harvey's extra stress lately?" "Late nights, worrying, that sort of thing." She let out a breath that sounded like it had been waiting a week. "He's always worked hard. Tax season, end of quarter, he barely sleeps. But this was different. The last 3 weeks he was tense, jumping at sounds, checking the locks twice. He didn't want me to see it, but I've lived with him 18 years. I know when his mind is somewhere ugly." "Did he tell you why?" "Not at first. I asked, and he said it was just work. Numbers not lining up, clients being difficult. Then, a couple of nights ago, he said—" She frowned, dredging it up. "He said, if something happens to me, you call a man named Nero Wolfe. You ask for him, not the police." I told him not to talk like that. He said he was being careful. "He mentioned Wolfe by name?" I asked. "Had he ever done that before?" "No. I'd heard of your boss. There was an article once. But Harvey never talked about him." Her eyes searched mine. "Is this connected? To Leonard?" "You know about Leonard Ashe?" I asked. "Of course. Harvey was devastated when Leonard was killed. He didn't show it at the office, but at home he was. He kept saying it didn't make sense. Leonard didn't live dangerously. He said it 3 times. It doesn't make sense." "Did he say why Ashe might have been targeted?" She hesitated, then nodded. "One night, after too much wine, he said Leonard had asked for his help. There were problems with a logistics client Harvey worked with. Shipments, invoices, I don't know. He and Leonard were checking numbers together, trying to make sense of a gap. Harvey said if they were right, it was big. "Bigger than us," he said. I asked if it was dangerous. He said, "Only if certain people notice." I didn't like that answer. "Which client?" I asked. She pressed her lips together. This was the part that made her feel like she was betraying someone. "Charterman Imports," she said finally. I remember because it sounded like a law firm from television. Harvey's firm did some tax planning for them. Leonard's company handled their freight. They met for lunch a few times. After Leonard died, Harvey didn't want to talk about them anymore. So there it was. Charterman, again, stepping out of the background and into the spotlight, waving both arms. Did Harvey ever say he'd talked to the police? About Leonard or about Charterman? I asked. No? He said the police had their story and weren't interested in the numbers. He didn't trust them to see what was really going on. She looked at me sharply. "I'm telling you because you asked and because Harvey mentioned Mr. Wolfe. I don't know who else to trust." "You're doing exactly what he wanted," I said. "One more thing. Did you notice anyone watching the house? Strange cars, phone calls that hung up when you answered?" She thought about it. "There was a man last week. Across the street in a parked car, dark sedan. He was there 2 days in a row, mornings when Harvey left for work. I thought it was a neighbor's friend. Harvey noticed him too. The second day, he took a different route to the subway." Her fingers tightened on the cup. "He laughed it off, but he was shaken. I've been wondering about that car all morning." "Can you describe the driver?" I asked. "Hat, sunglasses, beard, maybe, or stubble. White guy. That's all, I'm sorry." "It's more than nothing," I said. "If the police talk to you again, tell them the same thing. Lieutenant Parker's the one you want. He's not stupid either." "I'll remember," she said. A doctor in surgical scrubs appeared at the doorway and called her name. She stood up so fast the coffee nearly went flying, and I caught it before it redecorated the floor. "Go," I told her. "I'll get out of your hair. If it's all right, I may call you later." She nodded, already moving toward the doctor. I watched her go, then headed for the elevator. In the lobby, I found a payphone, the ancient kind that still eats quarters, and called the brownstone. Fritz answered. "Yes?" "Tell Wolfe," I said, "that Geller's not dead yet. His wife is scared but cooperative, and Charterman Imports just moved up from interesting to central casting, and that both our victims expected trouble and named him as Plan B." Fritz sniffed. "I will tell him. He's in the plant rooms. You will not call him there." "I wouldn't dream of it," I said, and hung up. Outside, the air tasted a little less like disinfectant and a little more like exhaust. I checked my watch. Plenty of day left to make more people nervous. Next on the list, Chartermen themselves. If they didn't know yet that bullets were being fired over their brand name, I was looking forward to breaking the news. Charterman Imports lived in one of those glass and steel mid-rise numbers on Broadway that try to look like they were born yesterday and don't want to remember anything before that. The lobby had a waterfall wall and a plant that had never met dirt. A receptionist with cheekbones you could cut paper on informed me that Charterman was on the 12th floor and that I should check in there. I told her I'd do my best. The 12th floor reception area didn't match Lamson's workmanlike setup or Geller's modest suite. Charterman liked its gloss. Pale wood, chrome, leather chairs that nobody actually sat in, and a receptionist desk the size of a studio apartment. Behind it sat a woman in a grey dress and a headset. She looked up with the kind of smile that says she's already told 3 people no today and enjoyed all of them. "Good afternoon," she said. "Welcome to Charterman Imports. Do you have an appointment?" "I never do," I said. "My name's Archie Goodwin. I'm here about Leonard Ashe and Harvey Geller." The smile died like I'd stepped on it. She hadn't been prepped for that script. "I'm sorry." "Don't be," I said. "Just tell whoever handles your problems that one of them has arrived." She considered ringing for security, then decided against it. "Just a moment," she said, and murmured something into her headset. A door to the left opened and a man came out, mid-40s, compact, neat, with a tie that had more personality than his face. He had the look of someone who irons his socks and has never missed a dentist appointment. "Mr. Goodwin," he said, "I'm Daniel Kerr. I'm the local director. We weren't expecting you." "That's the fad today," I told him. "No one expects me. Then I show up and ask about things they don't want to talk about. It's a living." "If this is about our shipments," he began, "I assure you." "It's about 2 men who worked with your numbers getting shot on my block," I said. "If your shipments are involved, I'm sure that'll come as a surprise. Can we talk somewhere that isn't full of furniture that never gets used?" His jaw tightened a hair. "This way?" He led me into a glass-walled conference room with a view of Broadway and a table that could seat 12 negotiators and their lawyers. We took opposite sides like a chessboard with 2 kings and no pieces. "I understand Mr. Ashe handled your freight account at Lamson and Gale," I said, "and that Mr. Geller worked your taxes." "That's correct," Kerr said cautiously. "We were shocked by Mr. Ashe's death. Our condolences have already been conveyed to his employer, and Mr. Geller, I heard something on the news about a shooting this morning. Was that?" "Yeah, that was." I watched his face. There was real surprise there, and more. "Worry. Good Lord," he said. "Both of them. What are you suggesting, Mr. Goodwin?" "That depends," I said. "How much do you know about your own books?" He stiffened. "I am responsible for our U.S. operations, including financial oversight. Our books are audited regularly. We are in full compliance with all regulations." "That's beautiful," I said. "Frame it." Meanwhile, 2 men who spent the last weeks of their lives looking at numbers tied to chartermen ended up at the business end of the same gun. If you've got a better explanation, I'd love to hear it. He swallowed once. "Are you a police officer?" "No. Worse. I work for Nero Wolfe." Recognition again. The name had legs in this town. "The detective," he said. "I see. And what exactly is Mr. Wolfe's interest in our company? Geography and coincidence, I said. Both men were shot on the same block as Wolfe's brownstone on their way to or from work tied to your business. Wolfe doesn't like bullets walking down his street unchaperoned. So here I am. Kerr looked briefly like he'd like to be anywhere else. I can assure you, Mr. Goodwin, Charterman Imports has nothing to do with violence. We move product, not whatever this is. Then help me prove it, I said. When did you last meet with Ash? He thought. 3 weeks ago. We had a quarterly review at Lamson's office. He went over our throughput, shrinkage, customs delays. There were some minor issues, but nothing unusual. He was professional, competent. Any friction? I asked. Disputes over billing, missing stock, unexplained fees? No more than usual. He frowned. There was a small discrepancy, he mentioned. A series of shipments that appeared twice in the billing records. He said it might be a clerical error at Lamson's end and that he'd speak to them. It wasn't significant in dollar terms. I told him to let me know if it persisted. He never did. Double-billed shipments, I said. Did he specify which ones? No. Kerr spread his hands. We move thousands of units. That's why we pay Lamson. And Ash. He hesitated. Is that what this is about? Someone cooking our invoices? Possibly, I said. Or possibly someone using your invoices to cook something else. How about Geller? When did you last see him? A month ago. He came by to discuss our tax position. He rubbed his forehead. He asked more questions than usual that day. About warehousing costs, transit times, insurance values. I thought he was being thorough. He mentioned wanting to see the freight manifests as well as our internal ledgers. I referred him back to Lamson. I didn't think anything more of it. Did he seem disturbed? I asked. Unnerved? Kerr sighed. He said, if I were a paranoid man, I'd think someone was moving ghosts through your supply chain. I laughed. He didn't. Then he said he was sure it would make sense once he reconciled everything. Ghosts, I said. That's charming. Did you ever hear the name Nero Wolfe from either of them? No, he said. This is the first I've heard of your employer in connection with any of this. And you haven't had any unusual visitors lately? I asked. People asking about Ash or Geller or about specific shipments. His eyes sharpened. There was a man last week. Came in asking about one of our container numbers. He said he was from a customs brokerage firm. I asked for ID. He couldn't produce anything convincing, so I refused to discuss client details. He left. I assumed it was a fishing expedition from a competitor. Describe him, I said. Mid-30s, average height, dark hair, no distinguishing marks. I'm sorry, I didn't have him pose for a mugshot. That's all right, I said. I'm developing quite a collection of mid-30s, average height men today. We were both quiet a moment. Outside the glass, an assistant hurried by with a stack of folders like a stagehand passing scenery. Mr. Kerr, I said, I strongly suggest you review your internal controls. Right now, you're standing in the middle of something that involves money, logistics, and a man with a rifle who doesn't like loose ends. If there's someone inside Charterman helping him, you want to know before he decides you've seen too much. His knuckles whitened on the table edge. Are you suggesting I'm in danger? I'm suggesting you're on the board, I said. Whether you're a pawn or something with better moves is up to you. He swallowed. What do you want from me? Cooperation, I said. Copies of any correspondence with Ash or Geller in the last 2 months. Any internal audits touching Lamson, and a list of everyone in this office who has access to both freight data and financial records. Names, roles, habits, favorite drinks. The usual. He looked like he wanted to argue, then thought about 2 bodies and decided against it. I'll have my assistant assemble what we can, he said. But I will want assurances that are confidential information. You'll get what you get, I said. If you have a lawyer, talk to him, then call me. I handed over one of the cards I keep for people who like paper. If your mysterious customs broker comes back, don't play hero. Call Lieutenant Cal Parker at Manhattan South, or me, preferably before anyone else ends up under a sheet. As he walked me back to reception, I caught a glimpse of a man standing by the far copy room door, watching us. Slim, tan, with the deep, relaxed slouch of someone for whom offices are temporary inconveniences. Our eyes met for a second. His were amused and cool. Then he stepped back and vanished down the hall. "Who's that?" I asked casually. "Who?" Kerr looked around. "Oh, probably Mr. Vance. He handles some of our overseas liaison. Why?" "Just checking," I said. "I collect faces too." On the street again, Broadway's noise wrapped around me like it was trying to sell me something. I checked my watch. Still time to annoy a superintendent before dinner. Our street was quieter when I got back, but not much. I crossed to the building opposite Geller's and rang the superintendent's bell. A voice came over the intercom, suspicious and bored. "Yeah?" "Archie Goodwin," I said. "Nero Wolfe's house across the way. I'd like to talk about your roof." There was a pause long enough to suggest I'd just joined a long list of people who'd wanted something from that roof. "What about my roof?" the voice demanded. "It's got a better view of my front door than I do," I said. "And lately people have been admiring the scenery with firearms. I'd like to know who you're renting the seats to." That brought me another pause, shorter and more thoughtful. Then, "Come down. Basement." The door buzzed. I went in and followed the aroma of boiled cabbage and old plaster to the basement office. It was a Murphy bed of a room, everything folded into everything else, with a desk wedged between two filing cabinets and a calendar on the wall that was 2 months behind, but trying. The superintendent was a blocky man in his 50s with a mop of grey hair and the expression of someone who'd seen every kind of foolishness and had started grading it on a curve. He wore a sweatshirt that said Mets like a cry for help. "You from the cops?" he asked, looking me over. "No," I said. "I work for Nero Wolfe. Over there." I jerked a thumb in the general direction of the brownstone. He grunted. "Yeah, big guy. Never sees the sidewalk. I know the house." "Then you know why he's interested in your roof," I said. "Twice now somebody's used it as one of its cousins to put holes in men on this block. I'm trying to find out how much hospitality you've been providing." He waved me into a chair that had lost the will to live sometime during the Bloomberg administration and sat behind his desk. "My hospitality," he said, "stops at the 4th floor. Tenant doors, not mine. Roof access is through the top landing. I keep the door locked." "Always?" I asked. "Always," he said. "Except when somebody leaves it open, which they're not supposed to. Teenagers go up there to smoke. Couples go up there to neck. I go up there to tell them to go be stupid somewhere else." "How many have keys?" I asked. "Just me and the landlord," he said. "But the latch is a joke. If you give it a good tug or use your shoulder, it'll open if somebody didn't set the deadbolt. And sometimes they don't. I yell, they forget." "And mornings?" I said. "8-ish, around the time bullets start flying." He frowned. "I don't go up that early. I'm doing garbage, boiler, whatever. Tenants going to work. Nobody's supposed to be up there then." "But you can't swear they weren't," I said. He glared. "If I could swear where everyone was every minute, I'd be running the city." "Let's narrow it down," I said. "Day Ash was shot? You talked to the cops?" "Yeah. They came by, knocked on doors, asked if anybody saw anything. I told them what I'm telling you. Roof's supposed to be locked. Kids sometimes sneak up. They went up, looked around." He shrugged. "Didn't find anything." "How about this morning?" I asked. "Anyone come see you?" "Not yet," he said. "You're the first tourist." "Tourist, that's me." "Anybody in the building stand out the last month?" I asked. "New tenants, short-term guests, people who suddenly took an interest in Sunrise? He thought, rubbing the back of his neck. New guy in 4B, he said finally. Moved in 3 weeks ago. Quiet. Pays on time. Carries a guitar case. That's practically a character flaw in this town, I said. You ever see him on the roof? Once, the super admitted. Day after he moved in. I heard the door bang and went up. He was standing near the edge looking over the street. Said he was getting a feel for the neighborhood. I told him the feel didn't come with vertigo and to go back downstairs. What's his name? I asked. He reached for a file, flipped through sheets. Rental app says Thomas Vance. Works in international coordination. That means nothing to me. Half these people say consultant, and I say fine, long as the check's clear. Thomas Vance. I didn't have Wolfe's memory, but I didn't need it. I'd heard that name an hour earlier at Charterman, applied to a man who'd been watching me and Kerr like we were a show with bad reviews. Vance, I repeated. Slim, tan, looks like he's allergic to manual labor. That him, the super said. Why? You know him? We've been introduced by fate, not officially, I said. He home now? Probably not. He's in and out like he's got a schedule but doesn't want anybody to know it. You can try if you want. He eyed me. You gonna tell the cops about him? When the time is right, I said. Meanwhile, I'd appreciate it if you treated that roof door like it was made of gold. Deadbolt, chain, whatever you've got. If anybody complains, send them to me. He snorted. Sure, I'll tell him to go bother the fat genius across the street. It's a full-time job, I said. Thanks for the tour. On my way out, I detoured up the stairs. The top landing smelled like dust and other people's dinners. The door to the roof was heavy steel with a deadbolt and a latch that had seen better days. I tried the knob. It turned. The door opened 3 inches before the deadbolt caught. The superintendent had been telling the truth and also not. The deadbolt was in. The latch was the joke. If somebody with hands and a tool wanted in when the bolt wasn't thrown, they'd manage. If the super forgot the bolt once in a while, the roof had seen traffic. I peered through the crack. Evening light washed the tar and gravel in a tired glow. The view over the street was good. Too good. From here you could see Lamson's block, Geller's door, and the brownstone. A decent rifle and a colder heart could make a statement from this spot. I shut the door and slid the bolt home myself, testing it. Solid. If our shooter came back for another matinee, he'd have to knock harder. By the time I got back to the brownstone, the light was sliding toward dinner. Inside, the air was doing better than the street. Fritz had a pot roasting somewhere and had opened a window just enough to let in air without letting in anything else. I shrugged out of my coat in the hall and went into the office. Wolfe wasn't there. That was all right. He'd be down from the plant rooms in 10 minutes. I planned to spend those minutes organizing my notes into something he could chew on without indigestion. I got as far as my desk before I stopped. Something was wrong. Not big wrong. Not overturned furniture wrong, but wrong. The top drawer of my desk was open 1/2 inch. I don't leave it like that. The blotter had a corner skewed. The phone, which I habitually park at a right angle to the inkwell, was off by a degree or 2. It would have been nothing to most people. I'm not most people. I live in this room. I know how it breathes. And Wolfe's desk, which is as inviolate as the crown jewels, had something on it that hadn't been there when I left. At least, not in that exact position. The bullet, still in its plastic bag, had moved. Only 1 inch, maybe 2. But earlier, it had lain squarely on the blotter, aligned with the edge. Now it was closer to the front, angled slightly, as if someone had picked it up, looked at it, and put it back down with less reverence. I stood very still. We hadn't had callers since I left with my hat. Fritz doesn't wander into the office to admire ballistics. Theodore doesn't leave the plant rooms during daylight unless there's a fire or a riot. And Nero Wolfe does not shift evidence around for fun. Which meant someone else had been in this room with enough nerve to approach Wolfe's desk and enough interest to put their fingers on a bullet meant for a cop's file. I crossed to the desk and bent over the plastic. No dust, no smudges I could see without a kit. I didn't touch it. I just looked at it and at the faint, greasy oval halfway down the bag that hadn't been there this morning. Whoever had been here hadn't taken anything, as far as my eyes could tell. They'd left the bullet, but they'd wanted a closer look. Behind me, I heard Wolfe's heavy tread on the stairs and Fritz's lighter one following. I straightened, turned, and watched him enter his office, full king mode, heading for his chair. "Nero," I said, before he could lower himself. "We've had company." He stopped with one knee already bending like I'd hit a switch. Fritz, behind him, nearly rear-ended him with a tray. "Company?" Wolfe repeated. His eyes moved past me, across the room, and settled on the desk. For a man who hates exertion, I have never seen anyone move their gaze faster. He saw it. You didn't need a PhD in wolfology to know. His head tilted a fraction, the way it does when an orchid is blooming where it shouldn't. "What," he said slowly, "has been done here?" "Not much," I said. "Just enough." The top drawer of my desk was cracked. Blotters crooked, phones off its usual mark, and your little souvenir. I indicated the bullet, took a walk, and came back with a new attitude. Fritz made a small, strangled sound. "I have not been in this room since you left, Archie. I swear it. The door has been closed." "I know," I told him. "Nobody's saying you were in here playing with ballistics." Wolfe stood there, not yet seated, which, in our house, is the equivalent of a 5-alarm fire. "The door was locked?" he asked. "When I left, no," I said. "I knew you'd be down in a few minutes. I didn't turn the key, but no one rang." "Fritz?" "No one rang," Fritz confirmed. "I would have heard. I was in the kitchen. Theodore is upstairs. He has not left the plant rooms." "Windows," Wolfe said. "Closed and latched," I answered. "Unless someone's added teleportation to our suspect list, they came through the front door, which means they either had a key or they got very friendly with the new chain." Wolfe's lips compressed. "Fritz, was the chain set?" Fritz flushed, which on him is like a siren. "Yes. When Mr. Goodwin left, I set it. When I went to market, I unhooked it and locked the door. When I returned, I locked it again. The chain was still hooked." "So someone visited," I said, "between the time I left for the hospital and the time you went to market, or while you were inspecting cabbages. They had a key, slipped the lock, eased the chain. It can be done, with practice, and went sightseeing. Or they paid a locksmith to do it yesterday and just tried the door." Wolfe moved to his desk and bent. Actually bent over the bullet. He didn't touch it. He never does when the police have dibs. He stared at the smudge on the plastic as if he could will it to name its owner. "Nothing else is disturbed?" he asked. "Not that my eagle eye can see," I said. "No missing papers, no drawers dumped. They came for one thing, took a look, and left it. They didn't even steal your beer, which argues either class or stupidity." He grunted. "They wish to confirm it." "Confirm what?" I asked. "That the bullet is here," he said, "and that it is the bullet. Lieutenant Parker told me he brought a slug from Ash's case. Our visitor wished to see it with his own eyes, perhaps to assure himself that we and the police are indeed comparing notes, or to learn whether we possess something he did not expect us to have. So it's reconnaissance," I said. "Not burglary. That's comforting. Our shooter, or one of his friends, wanted to know what's on your desk." "Or in my mind," Wolfe said curtly. He straightened, slowly, like gravity had doubled since morning. "This is intolerable." "You can say that again," I agreed. He's been on your street, your roof, and now your rug. Wolfe turned to Fritz. You will, from this moment, admit no one without visual confirmation and my express consent. The chain stays set unless I order otherwise. Delivery men will leave packages on the stoop. If the governor himself arrives, you will tell him to go to the devil and telephone me. Yes, sir, Fritz said, shaken but recovering. I will get a second chain. Get 3, Wolfe snapped, then caught himself. No, 2 will suffice. Fritz withdrew, offended on behalf of brass hardware everywhere. Wolfe lowered himself into his chair at last, slowly, as if taking possession again. His eyes came to me. Our visitor, he said, is either foolhardy or assured of his impunity. Both traits are instructive. You will telephone Saul. Panzer, I said, music to my ears. You will tell him, Wolfe went on, that I require him at once. He is to get a full description from you of the man called Vance at Charterman and of the new tenant in 4B, and he is to determine whether those 2 men are one man. He will also learn where that man eats, sleeps, and commits his indiscretions. We will not be surprised again. Saul's going to enjoy this, I said. He likes people who think they're invisible. Good, Wolfe said. I intend to make this one very visible. He glanced once more at the bullet on his blotter and then away, as if he'd seen enough. Archie, he said quietly, we will invite them in soon enough. But next time, it will be on my terms. Saul picked up on the second ring. Panzer, House, he said, like the phone was a formality. Archie, Wolfe wants you, I told him, which you probably knew already, if whatever you use instead of a conscience started itching. It did, Saul said. What's he got that's worth interrupting a quiet evening? Bullets on our street, a freight company with indigestion, an import firm with ghosts in its ledgers, and somebody who just took a private tour of the office while no one was home. Interested? I'm listening, he said. I gave him the boiled-down version. Ash, Geller, Charterman, Lamson, the shooter's rooftop preference, Vance at Charterman and Vance in 4B with a guitar case, and the bullet that had gone sightseeing on Wolfe's desk. Wolfe wants to know if Vance 1 and Vance 2 are the same man, I finished. And then he wants to know everything that man does, short of dental hygiene. That's 2 days' work if he's sloppy, Saul said. 4 if he's not. He's neat enough to stroll into the brownstone and admire exhibits, I said. Don't count on sloppy. Saul grunted. Address? I gave him Charterman's Midtown Palace and the building opposite ours. Wolfe wants you here tonight if you can manage it, I added. He's cranky. I'd hate to miss that, Saul said. I'll swing by in an hour. We rang off. Wolfe had been pretending to read a book while I talked. He put it down when I hung up. He'll come, I said. Of course he will, Wolfe replied. He is not an imbecile. That, from him, is almost affectionate. The next hour was spent with paper. Parker had sent over a messenger with a thick envelope of copies, preliminary pulls from Ash's files at Lamson, and some of Geller's work papers that hadn't made it to a hospital floor. I spread them on my desk and started gluing my eyeballs to columns of numbers, muttering translation as I went. Wolfe watched from his chair, sipping beer, saying nothing. The bullet sat between us like a centerpiece. If you've never tried to reconstruct intent from ledger entries, I don't recommend it as a hobby. After 40 minutes, though, a pattern began to show under the penny ante noise. Shipments billed twice. Insurance values that didn't match declared contents. One container routed to an overflow facility that Lamson didn't own. Ash had flagged those entries in neat red pencil, adding question marks that looked offended. Geller's notes, in a different hand and a different ink, chased the same ghosts. Unusual volume increase here, no customs declaration there. On one page, in the margin, he'd written, if legit, fine. If not, large-scale laundering. Underlined twice. I slid that page aside for Wolfe to see. He didn't reach for it, but his eyes moved and stayed. "So," I said, "not just skimming TVs off the back of trucks. If this goes bad, it goes federal." "Obviously," Wolfe murmured. "The question is, whose enterprise is it? Lamson's? Charterman's? Or some parasite using both? And why did whoever is responsible resort to barbarism instead of subtler remedies?" "Maybe our boys weren't for sale," I said. "Or maybe the parasite panicked." "Panic," Wolfe said, "rarely repeats itself with such precision. 2 shots, 2 mornings, same vantage. That is not panic. It is method." There was a knock at the front door. 3 short raps, evenly spaced. Our doorbell has more personalities than some people I know. That one was Saul's. "Fritz, under orders," called from the hall. "Who is it?" "Santa Claus," Saul's voice said comfortably, with a shorter beard. I went to let him in, performing the chain routine while he watched with raised eyebrows. "Upgraded security?" he asked. "Our hospitality policy has changed," I said. "We've gone from 'come in, wipe your feet' to 'prove you're not carrying a rifle.'" In the office, Saul took his usual chair, set his hat on his knee, and listened while Wolfe restated the problem in 40 words less than I had used and twice the precision. "And someone's already been inside," Saul said when Wolfe finished. "Saw the bullet, touched the bag, left everything where it was." Wolfe nodded. "That is the most intolerable part." Saul's mouth twitched. "Figures." He turned to me. "Describe Vance." I did. The tan, the easy slouch, the amused eyes at Charterman, the super's version from 4B. Saul closed his eyes while I talked, filing it away in whatever system he uses instead of drawers. "All right," he said. "I'll start at 4B. If he's home, I'll learn what I can with my ears and a casual conversation about recycling. If he's not, I'll watch the building. When he moves, I'll see where he goes. I'll also take a look at Charterman in the morning from the outside. No contact yet, just observation." "Be careful," Wolfe said. "This man, if he is our man, has already killed twice. He is either skilled or lucky." "Maybe both," Saul said. "I don't plan to give him a 3rd shot." He stood, settling his hat. "Call me here or at home if anything jumps. If Parker gets antsy, tell him to sit on his hands and wait for the grown-ups." After he left, the house felt different. Not safer. That's never guaranteed. But braced. Wolfe stared at the bullet another long moment, then spoke without looking at me. "Archie, telephone Lieutenant Parker. Tell him what Mrs. Geller told you and that we are now satisfied this is not merely a local peccadillo. He will either see the necessity of his cooperation or he will not. In either case, it will move." "And after that?" I asked. "After that," he said, "we will begin arranging chairs." When Wolfe says he's going to arrange chairs, you can take it to the bank that they'll be occupied. It took 3 days. In that time, Saul earned his fee twice over. He tailed Vance from 4B to Charterman and back, to a storage facility in Queens that turned out to be the overflow warehouse Lamson didn't know he owned, and then to a bar where Vance had a discreet corner chat with Daniel Kerr. Parker, poked properly, got phone records that linked Kerr to a prepaid line Vance had been fond of, and property records that showed the overflow's warehouse leased to a shell company with a mailing address in New Jersey and a beneficial owner named Daniela Kerensky, Kerr's maiden name, which he'd been smart enough to drop and not smart enough to bury. By the time Wolfe told me to summon the principals for 8 o'clock, we weren't guessing. We were just waiting for them to admit it. They came, one by one, like students to a particularly unpleasant recital. Lamson, stiff with dignity. Kerr, crisp and wary. Ms. Brandt, guarded and curious. Ms. Morley, pale but determined. Lieutenant Parker, sardonic and ready. Saul, stone-faced in a corner chair. Vance arrived last, in a clean shirt and the same amused eyes, looking like he'd wandered into the wrong audition. Wolfe sat behind his desk, massive and motionless, with the bullet on the blotter in front of him like a paperweight. I had my usual perch by the wall, notebook handy, gun where it belonged. Wolfe opened with courtesy, which is how you know he's going to be ruthless. He outlined it all in that precise, patient baritone. The ghost shipments, the double billing, the overflow facility that wasn't on any official map. How Ash had seen that containers billed to chartermen never hit Lamson's floor, but were insured and written off as damaged or lost, while the real contents were diverted and sold elsewhere. How Geller's tax work had tripped over the same phantom numbers from a different angle. "Millions, Mr. Kerr," Wolfe said mildly. "Over time, a most lucrative fraud, if crude." Kerr tried for outrage and overshot into shrill. "You have no idea what you're talking about. Those records are copies," Wolfe said. "The originals reside with Lamson and with Mr. Geller's firm. Lieutenant Parker has seen enough. Haven't you, Lieutenant?" "I've seen plenty," Parker said, "including footage from that Queen's warehouse. You, Kerr, on camera with Mr. Vance, moving boxes you claim were destroyed in transit." All eyes swung to Vance. He lounged, one ankle on a knee, expression faintly bored. "I move a lot of boxes," he said. "You can't pin a shooting on a clipboard." "No," Wolfe agreed, "but we can pin the shooting on your habits. You took 4B opposite my house 3 weeks before Mr. Geller was attacked. You have a military record, sniper training in the service, which you neglected to mention on your charterman employment forms. You visited my office while I was upstairs and Archie was out, to see whether the bullet Lieutenant Parker brought matched your own work. You wear gloves when it matters, but you were hurried that day." His eyes dipped to the faint smudge on the plastic. "You're a careful man who has grown careless." Vance's gaze flickered, just once. "You've got imagination," he said. "You should write books." "Spare us," Wolfe said. "Mr. Kerr, you hired him. He is not cheap. Why engage such a man if all you intended was to balance ledgers?" Kerr's composure had been sliding. Now it began to crumble. Chartermen needed protection. In certain markets, pfui. You needed a man who could make problems vanish," Wolfe said. "You began pilfering with an accomplice overseas. When the volume grew, you required a domestic facilitator. You chose yourself. When Mr. Ash noticed, you told him you would investigate. Instead, you had Mr. Vance remove him. Mr. Geller, unfortunately, was conscientious and clever. He saw that the same phantom shipments created anomalies in your tax exposure. You could not bribe him. He never gave you the chance. So you shot him as well, intending to stage another robbery. The wallet and watch were overkill." "It's insane," Lamson burst out. "You're saying Kerr stole from both of us?" "From everyone," Wolfe said. "From you, from his own firm, from the government. Greed is not a subtle motive." Kerr stood abruptly, face chalk white. "This is ridiculous. I don't have to sit here and be slandered by a man who never leaves his chair." "You will sit," Parker said, rising too, "or I'll sit you." Vance's hand twitched toward his jacket. Saul was faster. The small automatic appeared like he'd grown it. Vance froze, half-turned, eyes now very alert. "Don't," Saul said quietly. "I like this carpet." That was the end of it, more or less. Parker had come ready. Within 5 minutes, Vance was in cuffs and Kerr was making high-pitched legal noises that didn't impress anyone. Lamson sat like a man who'd just learned his company had been used as a laundromat and he was the last to know. Ms. Brandt looked furious and vindicated. Ms. Morley looked tired and sad. When the door finally closed behind the last of them and the house was ours again, Wolfe exhaled once, long and slow. The bullet still sat on his blotter. He regarded it for a moment, then nudged it very gently to the side. "Fritz," he called, "bring dinner." Later, with corned beef and cabbage doing its best to restore my faith in humanity, I asked him, "You feel better now that your street's not a free fire zone?" "I feel," he said, "that an offense against order has been corrected." That will suffice. And Kerr, a glutton, Wolfe said. Not of the appetite I respect. Food, Archie, is taken into the body and transformed into life. What he consumed was trust. It becomes rot. There is a difference. Sure, I said. One gives you heartburn, the other gets you 20 to life. He grunted. Your vulgarity is inexhaustible. Someone has to balance your vocabulary, I said. Outside, West 35th kept moving, trucks and horns and people who had no idea how close their morning commute had come to being interrupted permanently. Inside, the brownstone settled back into itself. The chains on the door stayed. The bullet went back to the police. The orchids didn't care. I went to bed that night with one comforting thought. Anyone who wanted to fire another shot on our street was going to have to think twice. And if they didn't, Nero Wolfe would be waiting for the bullet, for the man behind it, and for the bill.